everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Every Wednesday, photographers meet here to connect, inspire, and create. My guests share their photography tips and insight into their creative journeys, and they inspire us to look at a subject a little differently. You can sign up for a newsletter and find the schedule for upcoming sessions on my website at lindanickell.com. Tonight's guest is Lee Hoy. Lee's home base is in the Davis Mountains of West Texas, but his work with Wildside Nature Tours keeps him in the field as he leads photography workshops all over the world. His favorite destinations include Zimbabwe, Yellowstone National Park, the Galapagos Islands, and his own backyard in West Texas provides great opportunities to make captivating imagery. Lee is a contributing writer for the Journal of Wildlife Photography, and as an OM system ambassador, Lee travels with a small yet powerful camera kit, and you'll get a peek at what he makes with it in tonight's presentation, Making the Most of the Wildlife Photography Experience. Lee will talk about skills, habits, tips, and knowledge you need to take your wildlife photography to the next level. If you're on Instagram, you can find him at Lee Hoy Photography, and you can connect with him through his website on Linktree/Lee Hoy Photography. And you can subscribe to his YouTube channel at Lee Hoy Photography. Welcome to the Happiness Hour, Lee. Now you can come on.
Giddy up. No, thank you. I'll be honest, after that such pretty eloquent introduction, I feel a little underdressed for the ball. So I feel special. Thank you, Linda.
Bring your game. Bring your A game.
Listen, I'm bringing this. Listen, I got my Amarula from Africa, man. My A game just got kicked up a notch. Yeah, I've been so excited to be here. I was supposed to join back in April and I was in Cuba. And little did I know that it is illegal to Zoom from Cuba. And once I got to think about well, that would be an interesting way to foster a revolution. So I'm now in West Texas and it's not illegal to Zoom from out here. Some of you may wish it were by the time I get done, but I am going to walk you through one of my favorite concepts. This concept that I came up with is my overarching outline, if you will. I've got an outline for a book, but then I write articles for the Journal of Wildlife Photography. I've got all these areas that this comes out, and as I flesh this out, I talk about and do a lot of things that I don't ever hear other photographers do. As far as I know, I'm the only photographer in the U.S. that does a camera brand specific only workshop. That's either a sign of pure genius or complete idiocy, and I'll let you decide which one that may or may not be. I do a mentorship program for OM System, very intense, 6 to 8 month experience. So I like teaching. I like helping other people capture amazing shots. So having said that, I'm going to share my screen with you so that you guys can look at this awesome presentation I've put together. This tonight, I'm talking about making the most of the wildlife photographic experience. The very title of this was born out of seeing a limited but a handful of photographers that either miss a shot and let that experience destroy their day and sometimes the day of others, or people that don't fully comprehend what photography is always about, okay? So I'm going to walk you through what making the most of the wildlife photographic experience is tonight. And whoops, for some reason there we go. My presentation is not want to go ahead. So as Linda said in my introduction, I am an OM System ambassador. I shot Canon for 25 years. I saw they were falling way behind in the mirrorless world. I was tired of spending an obscene amount of money and carrying a lot of weight. So I shot Sony, Canon, and OM, what was Olympus then at the same time. Looking at all the special computational features, the price, the quality, it became a no-brainer for me. I sold all my Sony, all my Sigma art lenses, all my Sony lenses, all my Canon gear, and shifted completely to OM. Pretty proud of the fact that within a year of doing that, I was invited to join their North American Ambassador program. I am a senior photography workshop instructor for Wildside Nature Tours. I was just a precision camera and video in Austin yesterday, helping them plan out some of the special events. For those of you in the Austin area, they do the expo and they do other events, which are a wide variety of photography genres. But I planned the first ever wildlife only day at Precision Camera in Austin. And we'll be doing it at the Woodlands, and a landscape night sky only day. So it won't be mixed in with portraits and stuff. So you'll be getting more about that. And then, as I said, I write for the Journal of Wildlife Photography. Linda said I live in the Davis Mountains. It was 27 this morning when I woke up. I think it's around 32 right now. I love it out here. The picture on the left is my home at the end of the monsoon season, the McDonald Observatory in the background, where I'm sitting talking to you right now. If I lean to my left around one of my monitors, I'm looking right at the observatory. The Milky Way is pretty spectacular out here. So I love calling this place home. I always like to share what I've been doing this year. On the left is an image I captured in Panama by sticking a light source under that leaf and illuminating the cool colors. The bird in the middle is the smallest bird in the world. I finally got to photograph that, the bee hummingbird from Cuba. And then the massive Andean condor there with the Andes in the background in Argentina. I've been really fortunate this year to go and explore some pretty amazing areas. Well, so let me ask you all a question, okay? And you're welcome to respond in the chat. You're welcome to not respond, but here's what I want to ask you. What is more important? Okay, here's the question. What is more important? Is it, for some reason, because I clicked on the other screen, well, my computer's being a little turd tonight. The image or the experience? What do you think is more important, guys? Is it capturing an image, or is it the overall experience that goes into it? You can jot your thoughts down over there in the chat, okay, while you're thinking about it, okay?
Okay, so far it's being flooded with experience.
The experience, okay. Well, so here's my take as I've contemplated and fleshed this out. What is more important, the image or experience? Well, if you have a great experience but no image, that's not really photography. But if you have an image without much of an experience, that is kind of a stale endeavor, okay? So what I hope is that by the end of this evening, you will understand how the image and the experience ought to be relational, not separate, not optional, but relational. Okay. So let's walk through this. So, here's a good example. Galapagos Islands, you're looking at the rarest gull in the world with one of the most iconic scenes in the Galapagos. That's Kicker Rock in the background. Now, most of my clients hit this beach, and the first thing they do is they go sprint down the beach, because for a lot of beginning photographers, in their mind, the best shot is always just over the next place or just 100 yards down the way. But I sat here for over an hour and a half waiting for this lava gull that had been down on the beach to hop up on this rock and give me this shot. I knew what I wanted. So I had a phenomenal experience, but I got the right image. I got the perfect head angle, separation between Kicker Rock and the bird, nice overcast light so that the bird wasn't too harsh. I mean, really a really nice experience there, but I came away with a great image. Okay. So I came up with a formula to help people understand how I get here. Preparation, which is mainly stuff you do before you ever get out in the field, plus skill, technical, creative, there's personal, there's all kinds of different skills. And if you multiply that by patience, that will generate luck. Okay. Most photographers don't do enough preparation. They don't learn animal behavior, mammal behavior, insect behavior, bird behavior. They don't understand climate, weather, and how that's going to affect shooting conditions. They spend a lot of time on a couple of narrow sections of skill. A great many don't really have enough patience, which is probably the most underrated trait, I think, of phenomenal photographers. Because luck, a lot of people think I'm lucky just because I get to travel. Well, I'm often standing next to 50 photographers, but only a few might get the shot. Well, everybody else was standing there, so why weren't they lucky too? Well, it's because of these other elements that you find in my formula for success in nature photography. So learn that formula. Preparation plus skill times patience equals luck. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk through this evening. So first, let's talk about preparation. Here's a good example of preparation. The more you learn to understand your subject. So for example, birds are going to perch or sit facing into the wind. That means they're going to take off. They're going to leap at least into the air facing into the wind. So if you know the wind direction is out of a certain direction when you wake up in the morning, you step outside and you're planning to go to a certain spot on a beach, but you know that you wanted to shoot front lighting for that morning or maybe side lighting, but you know the wind direction isn't correct, then you can alter where you're going to go before you ever get there and discover that it's not going to be good because you know that birds are going to perch or sit or fly, primarily taking off into the wind. For example, another way to understand your subject is to know that if you find many rattlesnake species in North America, if you find it coiled up already, it is much more likely to remain in that position because it's relying on camouflage. So photographing it will be much easier. If you come across one that is already crawling, and it continues to crawl, it's much more likely to keep crawling and try to escape, and thus getting down low in front of it for a great shot is probably not prudent, right? But knowing that certain rattlesnakes behave a certain way and knowing what they tend to do when they're confronted, if they're crawling, if they're coiled up, if they're out in the wide open, if they've got something against their back, they're going to behave differently. And the more you learn that, the better equipped you'll be to capture great images. If you don't know that a lot of beetles play dead, so that if you grab them to reposition them for a shot, you might be waiting 10 or 15 minutes before they start to try to act normal again. So just thinking, well, I'm just going to rearrange this bit. Well, you might have just, man, they go stiff-legged back. I mean, forget it. You're not getting a shot of them. But knowing that can help save you a lot of time and frustration. Knowing that a lot of species of flycatchers will sally out to grab an insect and then fly right back to the same perch. I can't tell you how many clients, when it starts to fly off, they start to drop. I see their camera start to drop out of the corner of my eye. I say, no, put it back on the perch and get ready for the return shot. But if you know which species of flycatcher tend to do that, you'll be better prepared. So the problem with a traditional field guide is they are teaching you how to identify a subject, but you need books on bird, mammal, insect, reptile behavior. That's what you need to be reading. That's what you need to be learning, studying the ones around you, watching what they do. A lot of birders are in a rush just to tick and say they saw it, and a lot of photographers go, I photographed that. Oh, one of the phrases I absolutely hate, if you ever say it around me, I'll light your ass up, is I've already photographed that before. Oh my God, don't even say that crap in front of me. I'll school you on all the bad reasons behind that statement. Oh, I photographed that before. Oof, don't even go there with me. That won't go well. Okay. So learn behavior, learn how to anticipate a great shot because you can be prepped to do that before you ever get out in the field. So for example, I was down at this giant sinkhole in Brazil, and these macaws would take off and circle around. There were a couple of different species, and midday light, which I normally don't like to shoot in, was best because it gave me these big shadows in the background. And knowing that these birds would just fly, circle around the sinkhole, sometimes to go to a different perch or to leave to forage or coming back from foraging, I would set my exposure using my live highlight alerts for the birds in the sun, and I would pick them up in the shade and wait for them to come out and capture shots like this. I call this emerging light. That's kind of the type of light I love to shoot in. Insect behavior. Well, this is an orchid bee. Orchid bees are very shy. They're very hard to get to. But on my Costa Rica OM only workshop I went and scouted for just here in September, I had an incredible entomologist who had ordered pheromones, and he put little drops so it would draw these orchid bees in and they would hover. So I understand flash photography. I understand stealthiness. So this is taken using flash, handheld, and captured. Now, I mean, God, I love this shot. What a beautiful bee. This is not easy to do, but I had a guy there who had been using OM system for less than 2 months, and he got some shots like this once he learned what he needed to do. So understanding that you can't move around a lot, you had to pre-focus on a certain area and then use. I knew that if I used, subject detection, it would pick it up. Mammal behavior. Do you know what it looks like? What does a fox or a coyote do when they're about to pounce? Like they shift their back legs, they wag their tail, but when they're about to pounce, They stop wagging their tail. Their ears are very forward. You can see them, what I call loading up their muscles for the jump. So I shoot at 50 frames per second. Boom, boom, boom. This was my favorite frame of all of them. Okay. Knowing aquatic mammal behavior. Now, what are the odds that I get these whales surfacing in the one beam of light coming across the water? What are the odds that their blowhole when they breathe out? What are the odds that it comes up in the sun with a dark background? Well, I had an idea where they previously surfaced about how far they were going to go, just pre-focused, had my exposure set for the bright, bam, 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 right? But knowing aquatic mammal behavior is key because they're even harder because it's hard to see them coming up. When you're working with poison dart frogs, man, I know dart frogs, I know reptiles, I know snakes and stuff, once you get a dart frog that settles instead of moving around, you need to work it and take a lot of different shots and a lot of different angles. So, I'll see people take one or two shots and shots and start chimping. Man, I always tell people, unless you're checking exposure, which with flash you need to occasionally, don't just shoot. That's why I have the tattoo on the back of my hand. Just shoot sometimes, right? So another thing that you can do in preparation is learn how to orient yourself for the light you want. Many photographers drive up in a parking lot. I watch this all the time. They grab their camera and they walk straight out from their car. They don't give any thought to the background, the light, and they just start looking for subjects. But how different would it be if you look for the beautiful light that you wanted and then set up for subjects that may come into that light? So you have to ask yourself, do you want to shoot in some nice soft light? I love overcast light. I can shoot all day. Not a problem. Are you looking for some harsh shadows? Do you want to shoot black and white images? Well, I love black and white wildlife. So when I'm in Africa, I tend to stay out longer than when I'm in some other places. So yeah, I love midday shooting black and white. Do you want to shoot some silhouettes, right? Well, silhouettes are best earlier in the day, just because the sun angle is lower, you'll get a stronger silhouette and a better shadow and whatnot. So how are you going to put yourself in position to capture those? Do you want some fill light with a flash and to put a little catch light in the eye? So I was actually with Linda here. Her and the rest of the group stopped back up the hill. This was in the Faroe Islands, but the winds were brutal, absolutely brutal. But I saw a spot where the cliff curved back out. So instead of having to shoot with the ocean as my background, I wanted to with the flowers or other puffins in the background. And the wind direction, it was so they came in like someone like a 6-year-old throwing a football, completely out of control. And it was overcast light. So all I had to do, I could shoot from any angle. All I had to do was find the best angle for the approach the birds were taking. And I also knew the elevation of the birds that would give me the light and the angle I wanted. So when I got done with this bird, I immediately went my lens. I didn't look up or down. I went to that same area and looked for another bird coming at that same elevation. And it was just like manufacturing, just and then I'd go back and forth, Here, this is at a friend's place out in West Texas, and she set it up more for birding. Well, so in the morning, you tend to get this side light, which can be gorgeous. This is like raking side light. And raking side light provides a lot more depth and texture to an image than direct frontal light. So particularly raking side light is this scaled quail fluffed its feathers. Man, that cool scallop pattern on the edges really, really stood out nicely. I was driving along in Grand Teton the other day, and there was this fog and it was backlit. And as we drove by, I could tell, I said, oh, and I could tell from the reaction of my clients, none of them, they're all like, what is he talking about? But I knew I needed to drive another quarter mile down to get the right light. Okay. And they looked back and I knew right away they didn't understand what was going on. And after we got out and shot, then they were all like, oh, now, yeah. This is, and one of them said, I never saw what you saw. Well, it's because I was looking at orienting myself. I could see the light I wanted, even though I wasn't in the place for that light. That's preparation. I knew where the best shot would be, but when I first saw him standing there with the fog and the trees, it did not look like this. It looked boring. But I knew a quarter mile down the road, it was going to blow their socks off. And certainly some of my favorite shots of the whole trip right there. This is another example. I could not get the client to catch what I was trying to do. This cactus wren in Big Bend was preening, and he took like 30 shots, and then he used another phrase I freaking hate. I think I got that. You got what? What the hell did you get? Quit saying that. You know what that is? That's an impatient photographer's excuse to move on because they're bored, because they don't know how to get a great shot. Did I step on some toes? Probably, but I don't care. I'm from West Texas, right? So, and for those of you that already know me, you know I don't care. What I shot, I think I took 800 shots of this bird preening. I think he took 30. Well, when I showed him, I said, this, right? I showed him, this is why you keep shooting. Oh, I didn't get that. I said, no, of course not. You quit before I knew it. Before I kept trying to tell him it is preening. Like I didn't know I had to say, if you will keep shooting at some point, all 10 rectruses will be spread, and they're backlit. I mean, look at the pattern on that. It's just gorgeous, isn't it? So again, he kept trying to figure out how to get front lighting, but there was no way because there were thorn bushes. I said, you don't want front lighting. Come over by me. No, I got this. And I was like, oh my God, why are you paying me? So, another thing, when it's overcast light, then you sometimes you can't reposition yourself. I'm in a snow coach, and this female coyote went up the slope around us. Well, I couldn't follow her up. That wouldn't be ethical. We needed to stay near the snow coach. Well, so I couldn't reposition. And I love this shot with the snow movement and the way she's walking through the rocks. And, in a way, it kind of makes me think of a Bev Doolittle image. So another thing about preparation is anticipating your settings. If you want to revolutionize how many great images you capture, this is one of the most important skills. And I don't know if y'all understand what I'm talking about, but if you chimp in the field, I'd like to Tanya Harding you, because nobody's ever captured a great image chimping. You will almost never see me chimp in the field because I've never taken an awesome shot looking at the back of my camera. Okay. So what I do, as soon as I finish capturing shots, I then go, what might be the next shot? And I'm looking at my settings, right? So if you're with me in a boat in Brazil's Pantanal, which I love, my second favorite trip, if we're going down the river, I'm going to pick a side of the river to photograph on where the light is going to be best. Now I know what you're going to say, but what if it's over there? Well, I don't care. I'm willing to miss that shot so I get the better shot over here. So I'm gonna set my exposure, my shutter speed, my aperture, my ISO as close as possible to where they already need to be for the next image. And if the light is changing as I go down the river, I am constantly changing one of those settings. Is your drive mode where it needs to be? I have people go, oh, you shoot at 50 frames per second. That's a lot of images to call. Yeah, it is a lot of damn good images. It is. It's a lot of really. So what I do is I go through and I pick the best of the best of the best. I capture grimaces that you don't get at 20 frames per second. I'm not saying you need to shoot high. I'm explaining I know where my drive mode needs to be for me to get the images I want. Then do you have a custom modes preset where you can get to in a second? If you go out one night and you shoot night sky and you use that same camera body to do wildlife the next morning, and all of a sudden you press the shutter button and you hear click, you're screwed because you forgot to change your night sky shutter speed from 15 seconds to 1500th of a second. And now you got to wait 15 seconds before you can fix it, right? How are your autofocus points configured, and do you know how to quickly change them? And if you say, well, I don't ever find I need to change my autofocus points, then you're not shooting enough. You're not shooting enough challenging conditions, enough subjects. You're subjecting yourself to results of your gear rather than you being in control of your gear. So here's an example. Talk about a tough exposure situation. The sun isn't quite above the horizon, getting close. This is in Brazil at a pond right out by our lodge. I've got this skimmer coming around, strong backlighting. I've got a Yukari caiman in the water. Now, I was set up to photograph in this spot. I exposed for this spot, and then I followed the skimmer around. Now, I'll be honest, to be able to get this is not crop. I crop less than 1% of my shots. It's not satisfactory for me if I'm cropping. So what you'll see here is the result of having my exposure set for the spot I wanted the shot to occur. And then guess what happened? Luck, right? I mean, can I predict the wing position? Because I'm very picky about wing positions. Look at the visual balance between the Yukari Cayman and I mean, how do you do that? I was ready for it, but luck is what ultimately resulted in that image. Oh boy, if I hear people tell me, oh, you just can't shoot a high ISO on a OM system. I say, well, you can't, but I know what I'm doing. That's my smart ass answer that I use most of the time. Sometimes I say, well, if you want me to show you, I'll be happy to. Um, ISO 12,800. Another reason to shoot 50 frames per second, high ISO. See how my snow is actually white and not gray or bluish gray? That's because I properly exposed the image by exposing to the right. So I had a high enough ISO where my shutter speed was fast enough. Look how the alpha male is biting down on the maw of that young male. That was one image out of all of them. Had I not been shooting 50 frames per second, I probably wouldn't have got that. Okay. Another thing that you can do in preparation is understanding your depth of field. So here's a beautiful cactus finch on Genovesa Island in the Galapagos, and beautiful sand. But had I stood up and shot at a downward angle, my depth of field would have been much more shallow on that bird's face. But by laying on the sand, my depth of field is longer because at this distance, at I was 6.3 or 7.1, my depth of field is probably barely over an inch, right? Barely over an inch, probably. So by laying down, I maximize my depth of field as opposed to standing up and shooting down. Another thing I talk about is expose for the subject or the subjects. So I had a bright background, this side lit, monkey here in Zimbabwe. The name of it just left me, not Gwinnen. I'll think of it here in a minute. But I thought this was such an adorable, beautiful portrait of this mother and child, very bright background. Well, if you put this in auto ISO, you're screwed. If you're using spot metering, you're most likely screwed. With live highlight alerts, I could nail this exposure every single time. And so you see how much detail I have on the right side in the shade. I have nice detail on the infant's face, but the highlights aren't blown out. So expose for your subject. When we're doing wildlife photography, you want to expose for the subject. And here's what people often ask me. Well, what if I'm always blowing out the background? Well, then you're taking a lot of crappy shots. Quit. Quit. If you always have to blow out your background to get a shot, that means you're probably taking pictures of birds sitting at the tops of trees with crappy, ugly skies. Just quit doing it. Quit taking crappy shots. So another part of preparation is learn to read the whole frame. Okay. So have you checked all four corners of your composition? Are there branches or other subjects that are creeping into the image? How is the lighting across the frame? Is there a hot spot in the background that you could eliminate, taking a couple of steps away? Is it even? Is the lighting pretty across the frame? What would happen if you just moved a little bit? Sometimes with macro, it's a fraction of an inch to make all the difference in your shot. Okay. What would happen if you knelt down, laid down, stood up, got tall, leaned a little bit? So here's an example. This image made it in a NAMPA's top 100. I think I've entered exactly 6 contests in my life. They're not really my thing. I like teaching. I don't care. But what I noticed when I was shooting this grasshopper nymph here in Fort Davis, I'm moving a little bit, and all of a sudden as I move, I see this yellow coming to the background. I'm like, oh, if I move a little further right, this other flower comes into the background. Boom, made the image so much better. This bighorn sheep in Grand Teton a couple years back, it was like minus 20 something. See the hoarfrost on his chin. He's fleming, he's sniffing for a female in heat. And there were so many bighorns around, and I like to shoot tight for animal portraits anyways. But this guy was right near the road. By taking, I think it was 2 steps to my right, I eliminated other bison so they weren't in the background. And you could just focus on that beautiful portrait. I mean, I love those guys. They are so cool looking. See at the end of his horn there, they have to start breaking off the tip as they grow because it starts blocking their vision. It's pretty cool. So when you're doing macro is incredibly challenging. If you want to get better at all your other wildlife photography, take up macro because it forces you to be more patient. It forces you to observe more and to slow down. Shooting this is a morph of Ufaga Pamilio, the strawberry poison dart frog that you find in the Bastimentos region of Panama. So, I've got a lot of flower petals. I've got this beautiful dark frog. I wanted to make sure I framed my image where the petals of this flower, it can be easy for petals to interfere with an image. So you got to move around. You got to sometimes look for spider web, is it interfering? You got to look for other things. And here I have a nice clean frame, really nice clean frame. I don't often shoot straight down, but I was doing a night walk. I think this was Ecuador. And all of a sudden I come across this beautiful moth sitting on the ground. And I love this composition. I love the contrast between the moth and the leaves. I really think everything's really in focus, and it's not my normal style, but I love this composition. And by shooting straight down, which I normally say don't do, but boy, I really like that. It does work at times, right? So here's one of the least attended aspects of photography. That is the physical side of it. The majority of my clients struggle with this side. Obviously, most of my clients are older, and as we age, it gets harder, right? But are you able to lay prone, kneel for extended periods, or walk long distances, carrying your gear? How strong is your core for doing macro? Man, yoga, oh my gosh, it revolutionized doing different macro because you're trying to hold steady in a fraction of an inch to get that focus on the eye. And I mean, when you sit down and do 3 or 4 hours straight of macro, buddy, that's the most physically demanding thing you'll probably do in photography. Are you well hydrated? The majority of my clients do not stay well hydrated. That's very important. In dry climates, I see this all the time. Wear long pants, long sleeves, hats. Keep the sun off your skin. You will stay cooler. I love Americans who argue with me that they'll be cooler in t-shirt and shorts. Yet every tribe throughout history that has ever lived in a desert covers up completely. So clearly they're idiots, and Americans know better wearing shorts and t-shirts, stay cooler in a dry, sunny climate. I mean, I live in the desert, and I can tell the tourists out here in a heartbeat. Buy good gear for extreme cold. Wear long pants, long sleeves, hats in cooler climates. And if I'm in a warm destination, I tell you why they're wise. Do you know what plants you're rubbing up against if you go to a tropical destination? I bet not. Do you know what insects you don't see or what you might kneel on? I don't want that stuff coming in contact with my skin. So just physically prepare yourself to be in environments where you don't know what may or may not cause you harm. And then particularly for macro work when you're kneeling, you notice how sometimes tiny little pebbles feel like they almost cripple you when you kneel down on them? Or if you've ever knelt on bull nettle here in Texas, that'll make say bad things about your mama. Go buy some good knee pads at a home print shop and don't go to the garden section. Those are soft all the way through, so spines and stuff go through them. You want to go to the section where the masonry knee pads are because they have hard edges. So guys work on concrete, gals who work on concrete, whatever hard surfaces, those knee pads are much better. All right. So here I am. I'm photographing stingrays in Galapagos. You see what's on my knee? A knee pad, because I'm doing a trail on extremely rough igneous rock to get over there. So even though I'm currently shooting in the water, I still have my knee pad on. All right. So, can you hold your long lens for long periods of time? Again, I'm shooting there in the Galapagos, right? I'm prepared. I work, I hold my gear a lot to make sure I can hold it steady. Notice my camera strap. If you are still carrying a big lens around your neck, you're asking for neck problems. You will never see me carrying a big lens. A, your camera strap should not be attached to the camera body for a big lens. B, your camera strap should not be around your neck. Put that weight on your shoulders where it was meant to be carried. And every now and then you might have to kneel down because a Chinese tourist sees that you're a professional photographer and thinks that means that you're going to be awesome at portrait work. And she hands you her phone and you go, well, I'm going to do my best work. And I told her to spin around, and by God, it turned out awesome. I mean, even a wildlife guy can get a cool. And this was a client of mine taking a picture of me doing this for this cool tourist. She was very happy. And then sometimes your training needs to be very strict. Sometimes you got to work really hard. No, listen, OM System employee took that picture, but OM System did not buy the drinks. This is not a recording. That I need to say that and clear the air, right? You know why? Because like I'm in a boat, I have one leg completely out to the side. I'm slid as low as I can. The edge of the boat's digging into my armpit. I'm holding the camera as low as I can above the water to get this angle, because this angle is very different than sitting in the boat upright. Very different image. Here, you feel like you're the prey. Here, you feel like you're being stalked, right? I do a thing I call pre-visualization. Well, I could not just walk up. This is my favorite bird in the world. I'm remodeling my home based on the colors on this bird. Gray, white, black, and that red. I've already got everything bought for it. I love this bird. But I wanted a wide angle habitat shot. Well, do you see what those rocks are? They're hard. Do you also see what's all over them? Thousands of years of, or million, who knows how many years of sea lion poo, iguana poo, and bird poo. I had to crawl to get that shot and then raise my hand slowly up by the birds, and get this shot. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, those were hard rocks. I actually broke a lens doing that. It fell off my back and broke, but I got that shot, so I was happy. If you want to work with a venomous snake and you want to be laying down in front of it, this is a Mojave rattlesnake, the most toxic of our rattlesnakes. This is actually taken right here in my yard. I know my working distance, but physically, I need to be able to get up and move quickly if I need to. Okay. Or if you're working with one of the world's most dangerous spiders, this is a banana spider, focus stacked. My lens is an inch away from this thing. You got to be able to move quickly if need be. And then let's talk about passion as a part of preparation. If you photograph what you're passionate about, it will show. Like my gear would be perfect for like doing a streetscape in Austin at dusk. And I keep telling myself I'm gonna do it. You know what? I hate Austin traffic. I don't want to get in traffic to get somewhere at dusk to do the shot. That's not what I'm passionate about. I want you to work on developing your own style that's going to reflect what you like and enjoy. Do not try to replicate someone else's style. You won't develop what makes you you. I'm impressed by how many images I see and I go, oh, I know that's going to be so-and-so's image. And I'm also impressed by how many people go, oh, I knew that was your image, Lee. I knew that as soon as I saw it. I'm like, okay, that's when your style is being honed to fruition. It should be a lifelong process of that, but it should start gelling. But don't try to copy what someone else does. Be you. Photography is so much more than about your final image. It's a representation of the memories, the experiences, the journeys, the moments, the triumphs, and sometimes the failure, and ultimately being grateful. So I believe that's all a part of passion in every image we capture. So I love when I barely pick up a bird. Like this bird all of a sudden was on us. I got on it. I got some great shots. This is a limpkin during my Mastering Bird and Flight workshop. I think I got 6 images. This thing just appeared. I love that challenge. I love capturing the essence of a subject. I don't like saying, well, I photographed the olive baboon before, because he'd be like, what if a portrait photographer, what if you signed up for a portrait photographer and they said, oh, I've already photographed someone like you. They kind of had a similar skin tone and hair color. I've already photographed you. I don't need to photograph another one like you. I bet you'd be pretty pissed, because I'm not Linda. I'm not Mika, I'm not Karen, I'm not Kevin, I'm Lee. Photographing me and photographing Linda. I mean, look, she's got dimples, pretty small. You know what I mean? Like she's got all these, like, you can do a lot of things. With me, you're like, well, this is going to be black and white because we just want to show how crusty he is, right? Like it'd be 2 very different experiences photographing us. And I managed to capture this quick grimace on this male all baboon. And oh my God, I feel like that brings out his personality. Like he was like, you dirty tourist taking my picture. That's what I love. I love this image. I knew it needed to be black and white because color would distract from what I wanted you to see in this image. So, I am passionate about removing the fear of certain subjects. This is a young fer-de-lance. Now, this is focus stack, but my lens was very, very close, right? My hands were not, but my lens was. And by focus stacking, look at the detail in those scales. If you don't find snakes just incredibly fascinating and beautiful, then it's just because you're playing on the stereotype of fear. Look at that eye color. I mean, if that was a dating app, that eye color alone would catch you. You'd be swiping right, baby, on that eye color, right? I mean, look at that pattern. It's just gorgeous. So I try to remove the fear of subjects through my imagery. I like to take people to worlds they'll never go. Most people sitting in their living room are never going to go into the jungle at night and find a sleeping longhorn beetle. but he looks just like a 3-year-old that refused to take a nap and finally just collapsed. I love this image. Like, you talk about a longhorn beetle with no cares in the world. Like, he either looks like he had a really rough day or he is living peacefully in the tropics, right? I love that shot. I like to show beauty of nature. You know, so many people never leave their couch. And this is a long lens. This is 20 something images. You know, most people were shooting with their long lenses to get an individual bird. I saw the color. I leaned my medium telephoto on the long lens because I'd use slow shutter speed. Look at that. That is 20 something images. If I had a big enough house, that'd be on my wall. I mean, I love that thing. I loved, I like highlighting individuals versus calling it a species. Okay. So yes, this is a Rufous hummingbird, but I always call him Bob because he has a different life than a lot of other Rufous hummingbirds. So by using, this was shot with a black background. There's no quote compositing here. I set up black acrylic in my backyard doing high speed hummingbird stuff. So this is as shot. One of my all-time favorite hummingbird shots I've captured. The colors. So when you photograph a subject against a black or a white background, none of interior designers, right? So because this is all about this individual bird. This isn't a field guide shot. This is about highlighting Bob and his life as an individual, not as a species that we lump him into. Okay. I love getting out at night in the tropics. In Panama, I didn't know it, but in Panama, I found out that I'm the only guide that takes his group out at night, and we went out at every night. And I said, we had 2 new local guides, both young ladies, awesome. They were phenomenal. And I said, so what did you find out? I said, what'd you think when I told you we were going to go out every night? And she just said, loco gringo. I said, oh, okay, yeah, I can live with that. That's fine. Yeah, probably. But you know what? You would never get this shot during the day. Look, I believe this is the clown tree frog, and I happen to catch him peeking around this gorgeous leaf. Oh, my God, I love that shot. But if you don't go out at night because you're scared or you're tired or whatever, well, you're not getting that shot. So another part of preparation is asking yourself, should you hire a photography guide and workshop instructor? Now, obviously, there are budget things that come into consideration. When I was younger, I could never afford to hire one. Now I'm old enough, wise enough, and I have the money to go, you know what? Why do I want to waste a lot of time in a new area just trying to figure out where to shoot? Why would I waste that time? Well, I might save $500. Holy crap. I can tell you what, you get 10 phenomenal images. You'd be wishing you paid that extra $500 if you had it. The key is if you're going to hire somebody, give them as much detail as possible on what you want to shoot. I would have people call me up and say, hey, I'm coming out in March to Big Bend. Oh man, and I'm a brutally honest guy. I had this conversation at the airport the other day with a man and his wife, and he said, "Oh yeah, we're coming at March." I said, "What if I told you that as someone who lives in the Big Bend area, that if you gave me all 12 months and you said pick the absolute worst month to come to Big Bend, what month would it be?" I said, "I would pick March." Really? Yeah. Well, isn't it cooler? Holy hell, you're deciding when the best shots are just based on the temperature? Are you kidding me? That's terrible. So I felt bad for him. He said, well, we can't, we got our reservations. I said, well, here's a couple of things you can try, but March is weak in Big Bend and it's heavy with people for spring break. So trust your local guide, but still do your research. Know enough to know, okay, this is a good guide. Ask them about what can you expect to see? What's reasonable? If you have 3 days out, what all can you accomplish? Because remember, great shooting light is not that big a part of a day. So ask them, what is it realistically we can see? I find that a tremendous number of clients have very unrealistic expectations about what they're going to shoot. They look at images I've captured over a 7-year period in an area and think they're going to get half of those. Well, that's just not reasonable. This one always blows me away. If you pay me a ton of money to take you out, why aren't you tailgating my ass all the time? So I have 2 key phrases that I love all the time. Just shoot. The other one is, it's your tour. Now, guess when I say it's your tour? When you're suggesting we do something that's dumb, but the price remains the same. So I'll do it because it's your tour. But by God, you're making a really bad decision. So why you don't tailgate your guide blows me away. I know some people get impatient. They wander off, always wander off back behind the group where you already came. Quit flushing stuff out in front of the group. That's rude. But stay near your guides. They have the eyes. They know what they're looking for, right? I can't tell how many people miss shots because they go wandering off. For example, this is a good example. Kevin and Lachlan and I were leading up right after COVID. We were one of the first boats back in the Galapagos. This is the Santa Fe rice rat, the only native land mammal on the islands. It was out. It had gotten so used to the people not being there. It came out and was eating on this prickly pear pad. I think I took over 1,000 images of this mouse. We had other groups from other boats. We were like, hey guys, we got the Santa Fe. And they'd be like, oh yeah, it's just her. Okay. The only native land mammal of the Galapagos, and it's out now at this time. Now on the subsequent trips, we don't hardly see them because they're back to being shy. So listening to your guide and knowing when you should spend some time. You know, Big Ben, when we were filming PBS, the Big Ben, the Wild Frontier of Texas, do you know what the cinematographer did to me? He called me up. He goes, Lee, I need an elf owl nest in an agave stalk in a scenic location. I was like, holy mother of God, could you get any more specific? Second night out, I call him. I go, dude, I got it. Now I had to walk through brush where I had to wear hunting pants where thorns couldn't go through, middle of the night, stomping around. Dude, I was so happy. He's like, there's no way. I go, dude, get your crap together, brother. Come out. I got it. Because I know Big Ben like the back of my hands, right? Trust your guides. You know, in Yellowstone, in Lamar Valley, I know a lot of people want to save money, so they get a few friends together and they go rent their own car. You know, the difference is last year I was in the park for a month. I could almost tell you exactly where certain animals are going to be. You can't do that in a week. And I know it's what everybody does. Well, we'll just follow the big crowds. Well, good luck finding parking, right? Because I've had to drop clients off so they can get a shot because there was no parking. Good luck knowing where things are year to year. Good luck knowing where the light's going to be in certain areas. You know, I had 5 fox sightings in one morning because I found a spot where they weren't normally traditional. And man, 5 different foxes within about a 2.5 hour period. So let's talk about the skill side of, my formula. Master your system, your camera and its features. They need to become a part of your hand and mind. Don't waste time learning the system when luck suddenly showed up. Practice at home when you haven't spent thousands of dollars to travel somewhere. You need to make your system like a part of just an extension of your body. Oh, how many people say, well, when they're going to buy a camera, how many clicks are on it? Who cares? You don't master something without doing it a ton. And then read your owner's manual or watch videos or hire a teacher until you know how your camera works and what it does. I can take my own bodies. I can hold it behind my back one-handed. You could tell me to change my shutter speed, my aperture, and my ISO, and I could do it all without looking behind my back with one hand. Now, in case you don't know, I'm OCD. Kevin says I'm CDO because it needs to be alphabetical order. I'm a control freak and I'm a perfectionist, so that does come into play. So you need to be able to adjust your exposure on the fly. This is in a boat rocking like crazy, small wooden boat on the coast of Peru. Oh, I love this shot. Love this shot. But I had to be able to adjust because the light was changing as we went around the island. I know what I can do with my camera. This is 1/4 second at 1,000 millimeters handheld. Now, this isn't a great shot. It's busy, it's blah, but this little puff bird. But I knew I wanted to test. I'm like, let me see how low I can go. Now, am I going to shoot wildlife at 1/4 second much? No, but I know what I could get away with if I need to. I also know about the Pro Capture drive mode on my camera to capture when the iguanas expel the excess salt out of their nose. I know how to do focus bracketing and stacking. I can press one button on my camera and go from regular shooting to focus bracketing, and I can capture an image like this of a recently emerged red-eyed tree frog that had just crawled out of the water. You see the tail, but it's got all 4 legs. That's what it looked like single shot, not edited. Look at what's in focus. Now let me go back. Look at the difference. And all I had to do was press one button and I'm ready to go because I master my system. So there's a comparison. I know that if I want to get, if I'm within 20 feet of a frigate bird in the Galapagos and I want the tip of the bill, the back of the head in focus, I can't take one shot. And if I put F16, it still wouldn't be in focus, but the background would be sharper. But if I focus stack, now I have the tip of the bill to the back of the head and the background still blurry. That's mastering your system, right? So another thing that comes under skill is great composition, is rarely an accident. Mika says, is pro capture the same as pre capture? Canon has pre capture, but it's not nearly as good. There's a lot more limitations on it, but yeah, it's kind of the same. Ours is a lot better. I'll tell you why later. Learn to follow the natural path of your eye through an image. So when you're looking at an image that you like on Instagram, Facebook, don't just scroll and hit like. Ask yourself this question: where does my eye start and stop? If it doesn't start and stop somewhere, it's probably not that great an image. But what is the natural path? I try to control that in every image I take. Once you learn to recognize where your own eye travels, you can start taking pictures where you're guiding the viewer's eye through the image. There are a lot of good rules about composition. You need to learn them so that you know when it's also okay to break them. You can't, it's very rare you break it at random and it works. And it's not important that you know all the rules of composition as much as it is that you learn why certain things are pleasing to the eye and when they're not. And don't argue with someone who knows what they're talking about when they're trying to tell you why an image sucks. If you want attaboys, you show it to grandma. If you want to learn how to get better, ask a photographer who's better than you and put your ego aside, and you'll learn. So, for example, there are times where you can put your subject right in the middle of an image, right? It's symmetrical here. How about this? I'm shooting standing on a moving boat in the Galapagos, pointing straight up, having my arm over the rail so I don't fall down. What are the odds that the visual balance worked out perfectly with those birds? Tell me which bird you could remove and that would still work as well as that does. Maybe the middle one, but the middle one offsets the bright spot of the sun. And again, the boat's hauling butt. That's where luck comes into play. But this image is good, not just because I got lucky and it's sharp or properly exposed, but because the visual balance works. Geometry. Man, you got to learn how geometry comes into play here. Lines, angles, all of those different elements. It's not normally going to be done well accidentally. I have another one of my phrases. If you watch my YouTube channel, which is growing and doing well, I have a series I do in there called Phrases to Photograph By. One of them is a vertical subject often warrants a vertical composition. A vertical subject often warrants a vertical composition. Remember, most magazine covers, they're vertical shots. I'm not saying so you can get on magazine cover. I'm saying there's a reason. There's a reason. This was one with Linda. The one of my favorite times in the Pharaohs, you could stand. I stood in one spot on a cliff, and I had this gray water to the left. I had beautiful dark blue water to the right, and I had front lighting. In front of me and front lighting the right. I was tearing it up. I literally have 500 images from that one evening that are just incredible, and I love this right here. If I had space, I'd put this on acrylic and it'd hang on my wall because I love grays and the contrast of the bird with this background. Oh, it's so pretty. All right. Oh, wait a minute. What was I supposed to talk about? Yeah, the negative space. So look how, see how you want your subjects moving into the negative space. You want more room in front than in back, right? Usually. Another one is challenging conditions. So many people pass up on incredible photographic opportunities just because the weather gets bad. FYI, a lot of us pros, we love it when it's challenging because we get better shots. So use the wind to your advantage. Rain isn't your enemy, especially if you shoot with OM system cameras. I mean, I put mine in the shower to rinse it off and clean it off. Cold and heat are a part of experiencing the outdoors. That's just normal. I mean, people are often looking for perfect conditions, and usually what beginning photographers go, oh, this is perfect. I think, oh my God, this sucks. This is not what I want to be shooting in. All right. But having proper gear and attire will go a long ways from turning those challenging situations into incredible images. So here I am in the Galapagos. Now, we had 14 clients were with us on the boat. How many of them do you see in the image? A zero. The wind was the strongest I've ever felt it on South Plaza. So normally the Galapagos shearwaters are 125 or more feet below us and you're shooting down. Do you see that shearwater on the left? Kevin Lachlan took this image. All the clients were huddled. Nobody was photographing except me and Kevin because we knew what we had. Do you see that beautiful Sesuvium, that red and orange colored plant there? Well, I've never hardly gotten these birds to fly against that stuff like that. right, against the rocks. You can tell from their body shape that the wind was brutal. So they would come whipping up the cliff, but when they turned around to go back down, guess what the wind did? It held them up. I could have shot there for 8 hours. And I finally said to my clients, are y'all just rushing to get back to the boat? Because I haven't taken a great shot from the inside of the boat yet. And they, oh, it's so windy. So what? That's when the great shooting is. Learn to use the wind to your advantage. See, oh, look at that. Look at that Sesuvium in the background, right? Here's another one. Now, do you see what's next to my right knee? Those are the very desiccated remains of a dead sea lion. That right knee reeked when I got back to the boat, but look at what I'm getting to experience. So this is on Espanola Island, and these are the calmest and tamest of all the mockingbirds. So how about shots like that with a wide angle? How about like that? Like he's like, oh, are you shooting OM system? Isn't that cool? Or what I often say is he's like, oh, so you're going with the 7-14 instead of the 8-25. Interesting choice, you know. Another thing I like to tell you when it comes to skill is that yes, post-processing is necessary. I don't know why, but I see some photographers who will say, this is straight out of the camera as if they're bragging. And all they don't realize is they're telling me that they don't know anything about post-processing or the fact that their camera is doing post-processing. There is no such thing unless you're shooting JPEG. You still have to choose processing that gets done to your image. So there's no thing to brag about straight out of camera. You're either doing post-processing in the camera or you're doing it outside. Plain and simple. Okay. So pick a software and learn it well. I don't care which one. When I judge camera club competitions, at least 80% of the images would do better if people knew post-processing. At least 80%. You need to take charge for how your images look, and doing so out in the field is only a small part of the equation of being a great photographer. But on the flip side, I know you love your saturation slider, and you need to take it easy and stop. Just because you learn Photoshop does not mean you need to stick fake skies with raptors. They suck. I know it. And you lose your credibility. Stop doing it. They're terrible. You never get the light the same on the background as they are on the bird. Please, for the love of God, stop doing it. And then another thing is, it was the 8-25, Todd. Another thing is when it comes to post-processing, kiss it, don't molest it. That's my general principle for post-processing. So I told you, Linda, you invited me. So start with a properly exposed image, right? So start with a properly exposed image. Here's the original image. Look at my histogram. It's all the way to the right. And when you, oh, hold on, shoot. Yeah, start. So here I am. That's what I want to start with. So exposing to the right gives you a much better signal to noise ratio. Right? It's going to let you get as much information as possible. It's going to give you the greatest latitude in post-processing. And don't determine how well your exposure is by looking at the back of the camera, right? So there's some other things in here. I'm going to pick it up a little bit because I know I need to wrap it up here. But see the before and after. Look at the details I brought out in post-processing. You see that? Here's another one. Look at the difference. The left one is properly exposed. The right one is post-processed. Another one of my challenges is be a lifelong learner. You can never learn it all. Push yourself to do more than you think. Failure is an option and it is inevitable. And I fail all the time. Great photographers don't mind failing. The difference between being a good photographer and a great one is often knowing when to not press the shutter button. So the more challenging the conditions, the more challenging the subject, the more you'll push yourself. My first time ever doing real underwater images that I would share. Now, people who are great at underwater would probably laugh at these, but these are the first ones I would share. But you know how hard that was? Holy crap. And they're not great. They're okay. I'm not going to throw them up against Paul Nickell and stuff. You know what I mean? So I like to push my ISO even higher. ISO at 10,000. I'll shoot at 25.6. I don't normally do street photography, but this is one of my favorite images of the year in Cuba. I might print this, put on my wall. I love this shot. Beautiful. I love this shot. So what happens when luck comes, right? Well, the image or the experience. This female jaguar on the right had gone to get a drink of water. And y'all, cat sex is very painful because the male's penis is bifurcated. There you go. That you didn't expect to learn that tonight, did you? Well, so females, when they're mating, females are in a bad mood. That's all I'm gonna say on that. So she was coming back from getting a drink, and I could see the male. He began to cower and tuck his ears. And I told everybody, "Get ready, get ready, get ready." And sure enough, as she walked back, she just turned and smacked the snot out of him, and I got that image. This one, I mean, this is one of my favorite images this year. I love this image. Look at those eyes. Look at that intensity. I'm down low in the boat. I knew to get my exposure done quickly. I knew it was a vertical subject. That's shot vertical. That's not cropped. Post-processing, a little bit of vignetting helps it pop, right? Oh, I love this one from Africa. I don't name many of my images, but I call this the night cometh. Because think about, for this animal at nighttime, it's a very different life because predators come out. And so as the darkness is coming up, look at that. You can see that the last light of day is right below the eye. And I love this image for that. And black and white, I knew post-processing, I needed that. I needed it black and white so you could get the emotion and mood of that image. How about being that close to a puma that's feeding on a guanaco, and tons of tourists came up, and I kept trying to say, "Come over here, come over." Oh, we can see, but see this bush on the left? They were only 30 feet to my left, but guess what that bush was doing? Covering up most of their shots. Well, eventually, one other photographer after an hour came and knelt down to me. Guess who it was? A Sony ambassador. Yeah, yeah. I was like, "Yeah, you know why I'm here, don't you?" I said, "I've been trying to tell him." He started laughing. Nope. How about capturing a Toko toucan in flight by having your settings prepared and waiting when you pick up the flight pattern they're doing and just standing there? One of my favorite shots ever of a lion. Show the personality of your subject. I knew black and white would do that. Post processing says I brightened the eye a little bit to bring attention to it. So that's how to make the most of both your images and your experience. I know that's a lot, but I like giving you more than you can handle as opposed to the other way around. If you want to hop over and grab on my YouTube channel, I'm just as obnoxious on there as I am here. I do an OM system mentorship program. If you shoot OM, you will not find anything more in depth than that. So you can hop over to my website. Here's some of my workshops I have coming up. Several of them are sold out, but I got some spaces. I'm going to start a Lee Limited series, and that's not that you want to go out with me occasionally. It's once a year. I'm going to pick a location that I might not go back to for a very long time and go do that location. So it'll be limited registration time period and a very unique location each year. And then there's my social media. Linda, let me unshare.
Yeah. I think there was one question in the chat that I want to put in front of
Yeah,
you.
throw it out there.
March was not your favorite for Big Bend, but what
No.
is a good month for macro?
Did I stop sharing? I'm trying to stop
You did.
sharing.
You did.
Oh crap. I just did it again, didn't I? Arg.
Hang on.
Okay. So my favorite month for Big Bend varies. Okay.
But
Um,
macro, for macro.
oh, for macro, right? So if you can come like 2 to 3 weeks after the monsoons, which are normally July and August, so September and October are normally, but if they're a little earlier in July than August, those are phenomenal. That's the best by far because the rains come and boom, the park comes to life. I shouldn't have said that because I can often have the park to myself in July and August. I love it. So yeah, macro is way best a few weeks after the monsoons.
Okay. All right. I flipped through here. That you're welcome, Mika. I didn't see any other questions. A lot of nice comments, but I was expecting that. You guys, I will tell you, he was very calm and composed here in person. In person at 2 a.m., he's like 10 times this personality. So, and I got to have you basically to myself in those in the midnight hour.
Yes, that's true. You know what? I had a great time on that trip. That was so fun.
It was fun. It was fun. I learned a lot. And I'm very lucky. Like what we were saying earlier, it's like, I'm very lucky. I put myself with the right people in the right places, and those experiences just magnify themselves because of that. So, Lee, Thank you for coming and doing this. I didn't think you'd say no to me, but I think I also asked you like at midnight one night. I'm like, hey, you can't leave. You're stuck here, and it,
No,
it
I won't
wasn't
say
like
no to you. I'll do lots of favors for you. I had a great time on that trip with all of you, and so no, you're on my list of what
yeah.
can I do for you, Linda.
Well, if this is being recorded, so thank you for that little clip. It'll be playing over and over. I'm I'm
I
not
love it. I
I,
love it.
I'm not just a pretty face, Lee. I have to remind you. All right. Well, Lee, thank you for coming. Thanks for sharing. All right. This is the last session for 2024. I cannot believe this year is almost over. I want to wish you a joyous holiday season, and I hope that you'll join us on January 8th when we come back. And until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.